Tombs and treasures have been attached to our image of archaeology since the dawn of the discipline. We archaeologists excavate lots of different sites, from parts of ancient cities to countryside structures to Stone Age base camps. But nothing has sensationalized the discipline more than the discovery of rich or famous tombs, such as the tomb of Tutankhamun in Egypt. Millions of people have been mesmerized by the treasures found within his tomb. But ancient cemeteries have so much more to offer archaeologists than just treasure. I'm Madam Archaeologist, your go-to informant on everything archaeology, and in this episode, I'll explore 5 fascinating ancient burial grounds and dive a bit into how their burials have helped reveal interesting information about the societies that made them. First up, we have the royal tombs of Sipán in Peru. In 1987, a Peruvian archaeologist named Walter Alva was notified by the police that gold had been found at a mound known as Huacarajada, aka Sipán, and that it was being looted by people who wanted to sell artifacts on the black market. As any good archaeologist would do, he stepped in, carried out excavations, and what did he find? A rich royal burial ground belonging to the fascinating Naqsh civilization. The Naqsh civilization flourished in northern Peru between about 200 and 900 AD. They are known for their sophisticated ceramics, which attest to the skilled craftsmanship of the Naqsh people. The ceramics were crafted in a variety of shapes, from decorated pots to anthropomorphic or zoomorphic figures, and are usually red-brown, red-orange, and/or cream in color. Amazing objects made from precious metals and other materials also attest to the amazing craftsmanship skills of the Naqsh civilization. Over a dozen tombs have been found at Sipán so far, and it's the richest ancient burial ground in South America and one of the richest in the whole world. The looting took some material out of its original context, but the archaeologists still managed to find many intact burials within different layers of the burial mound or pyramid, and they yielded incredible riches. The most famous burial belongs to the so-called Lord of Sipán, originally dated to the 3rd century AD, but later dating work suggests the 7th or 8th century AD. His burial featured exquisite adornments made of gold, silver, and turquoise, alongside many other finds. 6 other people were buried with the Lord of Sipán. We cannot underestimate the significance of this site in contributing to our understanding of the Naqsh culture. Many ancient burials throughout the world have been looted at various points in time. Looting isn't just a modern thing. Oftentimes, tombs were looted in ancient times as well. So, finding intact burials is a real treasure for archaeologists, both literally and figuratively. The ceramics and objects of dress from the Sipán royal tombs are particularly interesting because you see the Lord of Sipán's fashion being similar to that portrayed in ceramics, specifically in portrayals of the sacrifice ceremony, suggesting that these individuals on the pots were not mythological figures, but rather depictions of important warrior priests. You can see reconstructions of the burials and the artifacts themselves at the Museo Tumbas Reales de Sipán and at the Museo de Sitio Huacarajada. Next, we have the mysterious catacombs of Rome. These have been mainly associated with Christians, but pagans and Jews were buried within them as well. It appears that burial in catacombs within Rome started in the 1st or 2nd century AD. The catacombs are located outside the city's ancient walls because the ancient Romans had strict rules relating to the disposal of the dead. No dead bodies could be buried within the cities. A few exceptions were made for emperors, but because of this attitude towards the dead, all civic Roman burial grounds developed outside of city walls. That said, it is the Christian catacombs that have received the most scholarly and public attention. They were romanticized as places where Christians would hide and worship during times of persecution, but recent research has shown that that idea is a mere myth. You can learn more about this in my episode, Was Early Christianity an Underground Religion? The catacombs are, nevertheless, very important for studies of early Christianity because they contain the oldest known examples of Christian art. Themes include both scenes from the Bible as well as symbols. To give you just a few examples, here is the Good Shepherd within the catacombs of Priscilla. And here we also have a depiction of Madonna and the Child, and here the Adoration of the Magi. Here is Noah in his ark found within the catacombs of Saints Marcellinus and Peter. Here's an early depiction of the bearded Christ in the catacombs of Comodilla, and here are Oryns within the catacombs of St. Calixtus. In the Christian catacombs, it was common to place the dead in horizontal loculi and then cover these with gravestones, and all sorts of people were buried within them. The catacombs of St. Calixtus, for example, even had some popes buried down there. Next, we have the Achaemenid tombs at Naqsh-e Rostam in Iran. The Achaemenid Empire was the first empire carved by the Persians. It was founded in about 550 BC by Cyrus the Great and lasted over 200 years. It was the biggest empire the ancient world had seen up to that time. At its territorial height, it encompassed parts of southeastern Europe, most of the Middle East, the Caucasus, Egypt and northeastern Africa, and parts of Central and South Asia. 4 Achaemenid emperors were buried in rock-cut tombs at Naqsh-e Rostam, and I find these tombs particularly interesting because of this one detail that's found on the top of all their entranceways. Soldiers of the Persian Empire. But they weren't all Persian soldiers per se. Yes, they were soldiers of the Great Persian Empire, but each soldier represents a different ethnicity within that empire, Persian being just one of them. I find this very interesting because it tells us that this was an empire of tolerance. It fits the theme seen in the reliefs at Persepolis, which depicts subjects from different areas within the Persian Empire peacefully bringing gifts to the king. By honoring the different ethnicities within the empire on their tombs, the Persian emperors were showing respect towards their diverse subjects. Achaemenid Persia wasn't a melting pot. It was a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multilingual, and multi-faith empire. These tombs are architectural masterpieces in their own right, and by choosing to have their tombs built within imposing cliffs, the Persian kings were making a statement, not just of power, but also of the way they wanted to be remembered, powerful, but also tolerant and respectful towards their subjects. If you're interested in learning more about the Achaemenid emperors and how the archaeological evidence compares to the textual evidence with regards to their image, check out my episode, Athenian Democracy versus Persian Despotism. Next, we have the famous Valley of the Kings in Egypt. It's located on the Nile's west bank, opposite the modern-day city of Luxor, and was used as a burial ground for royals and nobles during the New Kingdom. Although the best-known tomb belongs to the pharaoh Tutankhamun, there are many others here that attest to the high artistic achievements of the New Kingdom. Over 60 finished tombs are known in total, built underground. Although there are variations in plan and complexity, the tombs generally contained at least a long descending corridor and the burial chamber, where the sarcophagus containing the body would be placed, as well as side chambers. Tombs hidden within this valley were chosen deliberately to prevent robbers from attacking them. Unfortunately, the majority of the tombs were looted in antiquity, King Tut's being an exception. However, the paintings that have survived on the walls and ceilings are treasures in their own right. Here in the tomb of Ramses III, marked as KV11 on the map, we can see beautifully depicted scenes from important funerary texts. We see the Litany of Ra and the Book of Gates. Here's another interesting scene from the tomb of Setnakht, originally built for the Queen Tawosret, which shows the gods Horus and Anubis paying honor to Osiris, the god of the dead and afterlife. Osiris is portrayed twice in the middle facing opposite directions for balance, while you can see Anubis, the god of mummification and guide to the afterlife, on the right, and Horus on the left, who symbolize the living king within this context. You can see him wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. There's no doubt the tombs within the Valley of the Kings give us some of the most valuable material representations of ancient Egyptian beliefs regarding death and the afterlife. Finally, there are the Lycian rock-cut tombs of southwestern Turkey, which were built largely in the 4th century BC. These are absolutely fascinating. The architecture beautifully complements the natural environment, and we find these tombs in different places within the region of ancient Lycia. For example, at Myra, Tel Messos, Pinara, Tlos, Antiphelos, and they've been found in nearby regions of Turkey as well. The rock-cut tombs at Dalian, for example, are quite famous. Although most of the tombs are simpler in design and resemble houses, a few of them are called temple tombs in the academic literature. You can see Greek influence on these temple tombs with their Ionic columns. Lycia was influenced by the Hellenistic and Achaemenid cultures, and we can see these influences in some of the rock-cut tombs. For example, The so-called Lion's Tomb at Mira features a lion and bull carving that shows clear Achaemenid influence. The scene here shows a lion attacking a bull, and we see this theme at the Persian ceremonial capital of Persepolis as well. The columns of the Lion's Tomb, meanwhile, are Ionic, showing Greek influence. However, we also see indigenous Lycian elements in the rock-cut tomb architecture overall, because the Lycians were, ultimately, Anatolians who later took in aspects of Hellenistic and Achaemenid culture and made it part of their own. For example, the tombs resembling houses are supposed to have been inspired by Lycian wooden architecture and became, quite literally, houses of the dead and their souls. There are even inscriptions written in their own script and native language, which descended from a language called Lycian. Lycian originated in central Anatolia and is part of the Indo-European language family. The dead also played a big role in the daily lives of the Lycians. Not only do we find tombs within the cities themselves, but here's a picture of the ancient city of Mira showing how the rock-cut tombs could be viewed from the city itself. The realms of the Lycian living and the dead were intertwined, and funerary architecture played a big role in Lycian identity. That's it for this episode. There are many other ancient cemeteries that attest to the ingenuity and skill of ancient societies. These are just 5 examples. These tell us essentially what was considered appropriate treatment for the dead, royal or not, but they also give us insights into other aspects of the societies who made them. Let me know in the comments which other ancient cemeteries deserve to make it to this list. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more cool content by your go-to informant on everything archaeology, Madam Archaeologist.